Hey, I'm Krista.
Hey, I'm Micah.
Welcome to Bad People.
With good stories.
This is a podcast that seeks to challenge black and white thinking
by exploring the gray.
Welcome here. Today we have another guest. We're so excited to have Hannah join us. This is our final interview of season 2. So we've made it through quite a few. And today, we're going to be talking about the subject of race. Now, funny enough, not running races. I'm also wearing my running t-shirt this morning. Hannah also, she's a marathon runner, which is kind of fun. But no, this is actually the topic, of more like racism in general. But so
big topic.
Yeah, big topic. So yes, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
Yeah.
So briefly, I guess it's important to know that I'm the child of 2 immigrants from Korea. So I was born in Canada, and usually I would describe myself as being Korean Canadian, and grew up sort of with that immigrant child mentality of fitting in.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And so a lot of my childhood, I felt, was about just blending in with whoever was around me.
Yep.
And growing up in a predominantly, I was the only person of color.
Yes.
And having only white friends.
Right.
It was all about speaking English, going to school, doing all the things that, we would do as a regular white.
Yes, like the normal
society.
Yes, okay.
The only difference being we didn't do extracurricular sports, I guess. That was sort of outside of our cultural norms.
Yes.
And that was always in tension with the fact that I was still Korean.
Yes.
And I think I took for granted how much of a dissonance that might have been as a child, because here I was presenting myself as a white person and moving through the world feeling like I was a white person, but then really people didn't see me that way.
Yeah.
And I also we had cultural things that we would do and, spoke Korean.
Yep.
I was going to say, did you speak Korean at home?
Yeah. It was my primary language until I entered school.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was quite fluent, and we would we would go back several times to Korea to visit extended family.
Yep.
So I definitely felt that tie to my Korean heritage and ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would you also bring kimchi, for example, to school, or a Korean aspect of your lunch? I always think of that when you're sort of comparing yourself to others, for kids, where they're opening up all their lunch boxes, and that's one of those moments where you notice wait, there is some subtle difference.
Yeah,
would that have been for you, or no?
Up until grade 3,
Yes,
I would take I guess what you would consider bento boxes.
Yes,
with rice and different kind of side dishes. Never kimchi, because in Korea you don't really take kimchi either, because it's really smelly, really garlicky.
It's like the sauerkraut.
Yeah, and that's one of those standard white people that all we just say kimchi for Koreans.
Totally. But the great part was that no one made fun of me in elementary school. So it was actually kind of interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. So no one made fun of me for the food I brought. I ended up bringing transitioning, I guess, to sandwiches in a juice box. Every kid, right? You just had a sandwich in a juice box, and that was it. No water bottle.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Especially, the 80s.
We didn't drink water. Yeah, we just had a juice box. And it was good.
Yeah.
And
we're fine.
Absolutely. We were hydrated.
Totally.
So I think what kind of made me take a step back and realize that I wasn't the same was in grade 10. I don't know, between grades 8 and 10. We had an assembly, and it was an anti-bullying assembly around and also I guess the presenter talked about the potential to be bullied if your skin was a different color.
Oh, okay.
So then I remember looking around, and I was
Wait a second.
I think they were talking about me.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
That's a crazy moment.
Right?
Yeah.
So it had never really entered my consciousness of being oh, maybe someone would make fun of me. And then in grade 10, I had a social studies teacher who was a lovely man, great teacher, who we were talking it through history. He just said that as a Asian woman, the cards are stacked against you.
Wow.
Right? And I was okay. You're, what was I, 15?
Yeah.
I didn't really pay much attention. I'm okay.
What does that mean?
Whatever.
Great.
Right?
Yes.
So that's sort of, those two things were probably the earliest times that I was like, oh, I'm not white.
Yeah.
And I didn't really pay much attention to it,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
And so moving through life, like graduating from high school, going to university, none of these things were ever a conversation for me growing up. It never kind of entered into any kind of identity crisis
Okay.
or like,
Yeah.
you know, when you kind of like come into your own in your early 20s.
Yeah.
My identity as a Korean was just not something that I really thought about. It was
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it was just is, right?
Yeah.
Would anybody ever say things like, I was born in Venezuela,
Mhm.
Micah, obviously you have mixed heritage as well, right?
yeah.
But you get like you're so exotic. Like, would there be some comments like that? Just like, again, that's all I ever got. And like, I had a sense that people would perceive me as
Yeah.
other, but I was like, but I'm the same as you. And I
Yeah,
just never
totally.
got it. And
I think the only things that maybe would come my way would be, oh, like your English is so good.
yes,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's probably the main one, but
really.
Just revealing sort of
Yes.
assumptions.
Yes.
exactly that
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to speak English, or that when you talk to me on the phone, the picture that you had in your head
Right.
is of like a white lady
Yes.
or a
Okay.
girl or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
It's compounded when I got married
Okay. Yes.
to a white guy.
Right.
Yeah.
So then my name changed from Hannah to like a very like
Yes.
Korean name to a very like white.
Yeah, like he's
Yeah.
a Mennonite background, right?
So
Yes.
it's just funny that I'm pretty sure, I don't remember what I was interviewing. I think it was actually for a teaching job where the principal said, oh, like you're not who I pictured.
Oh,
wow.
okay.
Okay.
Right? Because
Yeah.
based on a phone, like setting up the interview on the phone and
Yes.
like seeing
Yes.
my name on the resume or whatever, the application, he didn't expect to see an Asian woman like
Yes.
walk through
Right.
the doors, right?
Yeah, like Hannah
So-
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Hannah's a very like common
Yes.
name.
Yeah.
For sure.
But
All right. Yeah. So then so you got married. Yes.
Mhm,
Married at, like you said, I think like 20 something, right? Like after university.
Yeah, I was 25.
Yeah. 25. Yeah. So like middle. Yeah. Young, not too young. And then, you guys, you traveled a bit though too, right? Like were you teaching in London or?
So, yeah, before I got married,
Yes,
I did
okay,
a
that was
year in
before, yeah.
London.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but again, I went from like from maybe a very diverse culture, more
Yes.
diverse setting, right?
Yes.
Especially going to university, it's very diverse,
Totally.
to just sort of in the outskirts of London.
Yes.
And it was great.
Yeah.
And actually, shockingly, in hindsight, there was like no racism level towards me while I was like
Yes.
moving through the city or like in teaching little grade 1 kids.
Okay.
It was all predominantly white,
Yeah.
sort of students, right?
Yes.
And then I came back and a couple of years like met my now husband, got married,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Okay.
That's cool. Do you mind asking, what did you study? Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah. What?
So my bachelor's was in integrated sciences, and I
Okay.
focused heavily on the life sciences, like
Oh, okay.
biochem,
Yeah.
immunology,
Wow.
physiology.
Yeah. Interesting.
Hannah's pretty smart.
I believe it.
Yes.
That's
She
amazing.
teaches a thing or two. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And then you obviously did your teaching.
Yeah, right after got my
Yes.
teaching degree.
And did you start teaching like pretty much right away?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, straight
I've
out
done
of
that
yeah,
for a long time.
right at 23.
Yes.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. So what
Mhm.
like grades were you teaching
I
first?
started out like grade 1,
Okay.
and then moved through elementary, different grades. Junior, no, was it junior? No, it was middle school. Because at the time, their teaching jobs were very hard to get, right? Like
Okay.
you couldn't get one,
Yeah.
which is why I
Interesting.
was like, I'll get as they were recruiting teachers from London,
Oh, okay.
like, yeah, to go over and teach. And
Yeah.
so it was very easy as a BC certified teacher to go over and get a job.
Yeah.
And
okay.
such a
So-
fun experience
I
too,
mean,
to be
yeah,
like, oh,
right?
cool. Yeah. Do a little OE.
You like, yeah, absolutely. You just go overseas,
Yeah.
make some money. I
Yeah.
spent all my money traveling.
That's amazing.
It's what
So
you do when you're
cool.
23.
Yes,
for
as you
sure.
should.
Right?
That's so cool.
I love that.
And then when I got back, I got a job with a local school district, but you couldn't land like a continuing position in a school. That was very hard to come by. So you just kind of had to like take whatever came up.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
pretty quickly after a few years, I would say I kind of fell into like what you may consider like special education.
Okay.
So working with kids with complex needs,
Yeah.
autism, behavioral challenges,
Oh, okay.
the kids that sort of couldn't function well in your sort of typical classroom.
Yeah.
That resonated with me, so I stuck with it.
Yeah.
And I've kind of been doing that ever since, so probably for like 20 some years now.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of led into getting my master's degree in special ed as well.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the topics that obviously we talk about on this podcast is also faith. And that's how you and I met was in church. And so, yeah, I think one of my favorite stories that you tell about your life was just how you met the most incredible people growing up, right? And that almost would like take you guys on a bus to church. Was it like a bus or was it just like a large van?
It was like a
tell me about
passenger
this.
van, a 15 passenger van. And yeah, this lovely couple would...
Like white couple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
And they would invite sort of their neighbors, essentially kind of what you consider their neighbors, to church, and their connection. We got connected with them, and yeah, like faithfully every Sunday would
That's cool.
do
That's
that.
very
And then very like hospitable, open up their home every Sunday to have families over for lunch after church.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it was just a very warm and loving couple, and that atmosphere, right? So
Yeah.
you kind of entered their home, and like they made you feel very much a part of their life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
That's a special thing.
Well, and I feel like that kind of seeped into what you and your husband actually, I mean, showed us too, right? Like that was, I mean, you were community group leaders for a few years and very much have always been the type to open your homes and lead where possible and be inviting and stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Okay. So then that sort of, seems like life's going well. And then did you sort of have a moment where things took a turn, like where maybe there was like a moment of breaking or where things just, there were some cracks forming in maybe the foundation that had been laid for you or even just in your own identity? You want us to walk us through kind of like what that looked like for you? Yeah.
I think it was a slow process. So
Yeah.
it wasn't just like one moment, and sort of I think as most people in their social consciousness recognize that through COVID, there was a rise in hate crimes and really brutality, violence, and murder, and just this rise in very blatant racism. So what that meant for me in my workplace was that conversation was brought into our workplace, and we started talking about what does it mean to what does it mean to be white and not white?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a person of color? And as I sort of read some books and thought about the fact that, number one, I identify as a person of color. That, I think, was a very new way for me to identify myself, right? It wasn't never like a marker. So I would say that I'm Hannah, I'm Korean Canadian, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a runner, I'm a teacher, whatever, all those things.
Yeah.
But if you were to say, are you a person of color? I would have been like, well, I guess so. If you mean I'm not white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because I recognize the immense privilege that I have in being an Asian, an East Asian, right? So definitely when I approach the topic of racism and anti-racism, I recognize that my lived experience is not nearly as, horrifying as some others, right? So, for example, like if I look at the atrocities against, Black people in America and the enslavement, actually both in America and Canada, and the genocide of our First Nations peoples, then to be, Korean Canadian, I guess I just kind of humbly think that's not as bad, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it took me some time to really dig into and lean into the fact that, no, you are a person of color. And I think as a person of color, what does that mean to me? And I started reading some books that I've brought.
Mhm.
And what do I do with that information? So knowing that I have this privilege, then that means that then I think I have a responsibility to, I don't know, what do I do about it?
Yeah.
Right. So in that process over probably a year or two, and many conversations with my husband and conversations at work, it came to a place where I realized that this was something that I was passionate about and willing to talk about, willing to talk to people about.
Yeah.
Right.
Love that.
And I think in my workplace, interestingly, it was the first time that I felt I was given the space and the voice to be able to just say things.
Yeah. Like
Right?
people wanted to hear from you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your perspective, perhaps, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very, when you start digging into it and you start talking about it and going into what does it mean to be in a white supremacist society, people get their backs up really quickly, right?
Totally.
And there's a lot of defensiveness and there's a lot of, but, it's not my fault. I'm not, I shouldn't have to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're starting to have conversations where you could just have these conversations without judgment or without it turning it into sort of trying to put down one another, that was really encouraging.
Yeah. And it is such a tricky topic to, I think, navigate that way without the defenses coming up. And I know what you're saying, I resonate a lot with that with my own identity as well. I think for a long time, it's weird because you grow up in your own culture. I grew up with the Pacific Island culture. My grandma would speak to us in that language, and but then going into high school and my teenage years, and just surrounded by largely white people, and just realizing where it was all sort of internalized, that I just try to not even try. I don't think it was even conscious, but yes, I'm just a white person.
Absolutely.
And then having that reality of wait a minute, just looking back, seeing where I kind of did that, the internalized, and then coming to an understanding of actually, no, I want to know more about my culture. And it does matter that I have that heritage. And interestingly, that I've sort of not considered myself that, but I don't know. But did you experience, because I think when that time came of there was more awareness, I think, in society and people wanting to have conversations, did you ever find some of the tokenism too, where it's just because you're an Asian woman, can you now talk to us about and you're not even there yet? You might have been just discovering that for yourself. So I don't know, can you speak to that at all?
Absolutely. Totally. So Hannah, can you represent all Korean Canadians and tell me what the experiences are like?
Yes.
I give credit to those who are starting these conversations by very explicitly saying, you can't, when we talk about racism, you cannot just point out hey, Krista, can you tell us what it's like to be Venezuelan?
Yeah.
Or right? And I think so that
you're the mouthpiece for a whole culture.
Totally. No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I think on the flip side, though, what I was very aware of was, I don't know, and I don't know if I agree with how I approach this, is in a conversation, and I would be well, actually, hey, this is what I think about it, and I feel whatever you said, that's actually, that's that's racist, or that assumption or that idea is coming, centering sort of a white person.
Yeah.
And sometimes I kind of felt maybe there was too much weight put onto my words, because I'm just one person.
Yeah.
And I think there's also an aspect of when I'm speaking about these things, I'm I don't consider myself an expert, right? There are many people who are far more knowledgeable, who have invested a lot more time.
Yeah.
And so while I don't think I was ever tokenized in settings, can I say that with a question mark?
Yeah.
I also feel I wonder if at times like there was too much weight put onto what I was saying.
Yeah.
And I was very sort of and I do have a sense of nervousness around I don't want to get this wrong.
Right. It feels weighty and that subject.
It's interesting that you asked that specific question because I remember like in my position at church and then chatting with you during, I think it was, during the beginning parts of COVID. I mean, I think I remember us needing to tackle or choosing to tackle as like a church leadership board or whatever, the topic of what was going on in the States with George Floyd and his murder. And then
that was a big catalyst.
That was huge. Which, talk about bumpy starts to needing to have these conversations that most people hadn't had ever. Right. And
Absolutely.
and then how do you do that correctly? And I remember picking up the phone and definitely doing it incorrectly. However, it was funny because I mean, at that time, our church looked different, and it was like I was the token like Mexican, and you were like, the Chinese woman, and we had like one black person at church, like literally back then when
very
when
inclusion.
It's a small town, but not
Just free
really.
people.
Yeah, literally. And then when something arises, or I remember like one, there was somebody else that we had gone, she was a young woman, and we're like, okay, well, you're a person of color. We need to have you speak on this topic. And she had the same feeling as you, like, oh no, how do I do this and not, I can't speak on this topic. And you're just sort of singling me out because I look a certain way and because I have more knowledge, because I've had to have more knowledge to understand my own lived experience. And so that's tricky because I mean, although, you want to have better understanding and you want to try to do the right thing by, interviewing the right person, but it's really, when things have been put off for so long and when our society is so like the pendulum has, it's just so white facing that, that just gets to be really tricky. But yet, like what you're saying, like you do have to sort of have these conversations and maybe make mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's cool because I think it probably also caused a lot of people who are of color to actually reconsider their identity and their heritage in new ways too. Like, and that is a weird place to be. Like, your physical appearance is an indicator of something that you maybe have not yet fully like explored for yourself.
Right.
But then people projecting expectations onto that. And so then you being like this representative of something that you are not quite even like, in touch with for yourself. And it's just a strange place to be but I think the learning that can come from it or the self-exploration is kind of cool of
Absolutely.
Becoming more yourself, learning more about yourself. Yeah.
Totally. And I think that's sort of one of the key steps in this work around anti-racism is the self-awareness piece, right? And like whether you're white or a person of color,
right,
you need to consider your identity and where does that place you in society?
Yes.
How does that allow you to move through society?
Right,
for sure.
Right. And that's a very hard process for anyone.
Totally.
And I think in some ways, if you've been able to move through society without barriers, then it's harder to see
for sure
the significance of your skin color and how you're able to move in that space.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, I think one big piece to racism is that it's so like interwoven with class as well. Like, and it's hard to separate those two things. And where they intersect is, so if you're, middle class and you've had relatively pretty easy, straightforward path, like why would you want to think about it? Unless it is kind of put in your face, So I think the awareness is, a big part of the conversation.
Definitely. And I mean, that's something that we care deeply about is justice, right? And I mean, we just watched that really cute, it's a couple minute video about, like what it means to invoke justice, right? Like you only, like it's easy, or rather, when something is unjust that has come your way and you have to do something about it, yes, obviously that's when you stand up and do something. But then how do you stand in the gaps for people that can't do anything themselves, right? And I think that's a big reason today why we're trying to also have this conversation. Like for each one of us, like I think that was something that I'd asked you a while ago. We're getting pedicures and I was like, do you have an activism bone in your body, Hannah? And then you're like, actually this topic. And then I mean, you've championed things for me and stood in places and, you know, made sure that I felt supported where I've needed. And then for us to also, I mean, this is something, a topic that we care deeply about, but then to make sure that, yeah, like like you said, you have privileges in your life that things feel a certain way, but then how for you to also share your knowledge and teach other people about this topic so that anybody that's being like further marginalized, that there can be work done in that. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think just as you learn and get to express, I feel like, because I care, you saying we care about racism, and I feel like that for sure, but I think for a long time I didn't really even know what it, like I just thought racism is an attitude, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
That you just have a prejudice toward people of a certain color.
Right.
But I mean, I've been studying the last 6 months, and we touched on this topic a little bit in school, and just learning how racism is not, it's not just an attitude. It's actually like our society is structured on race, and looking at it from that angle is much more, I guess when you discover that, it's much harder to like extricate yourself from it and be like, I'm not responsible, or I don't have like, it's nothing to do with me really. To see just even the way a nation is built on Indigenous people and the stripping of their rights, and then now I understand racism more as a thing of power, like how dominant groups treat non-dominant groups in a society, and looking at it that way, it's a lot more evident and obvious of where it is and how it's playing out, like in our society, and it's confronting.
Absolutely. It's very jarring, I think.
It is.
When you do confront people with the idea that we live in a white supremacist society today.
Right. Yeah.
That is very like what? Yeah, like absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right. We don't have like the KKK like
right
walking our streets.
Yeah, or it'll be like, well, I'm friends with people of color.
I have black friends. Or Asian friends.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Right. Or just I think the jump to be like, I'm not racist. But being like, well, let's all, I wonder what we would find if we all sort of just like did an inward thing and looked at, how, I don't know, just assumptions about other cultures and like starting with those, you know, like.
And it's been like the learning for me, I totally agree with you, is that you had, like, I started with kind of like what you're saying. What are the prejudices? What are the microaggressions and things that are said about Asians? Like, oh, you know, you're the model minority immigrant because you're just going to be subservient. You're going to study and you're going to like contribute well to society because everybody wants to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah.
Or like some kind of professional.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's you put them in a box, and that is racism.
Right.
And I think what's happened, what I've come to realize is that when we say, I don't know, oh, I just think that you just make an offhand comment. And a lot of times we'll say, well, you know, they don't really mean it, or that's just a prejudice, or they're just making an assumption about, you know, that family or that people group.
Yeah.
And I kind of push back with, well, that's racist.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you tell a story and you're telling a story about someone that you've interacted with, and in front of that, you're like, well, the barista at Starbucks was brown. And then you continue on with your story. I'm like, well, that's racist, right? Because you never would say, well, the barista at Starbucks was white and gave me my coffee.
Yeah, totally.
You would never say that. Right? And a conversation that I've had with my husband, because he is white, is this like, and I was just sharing, and he probably was very patient at listening to all of my like outpouring of, listen to what I learned.
Mine too.
With all of my like word vomiting. And we were chatting about how one of my frustrations is that because we are in a culture and a society that was built for white males.
Yes.
And I think that's a very important, to me, that's sort of like we have to start at that common understanding that when the first explorers came over, they weren't even sending women and children. They were sending men, able-bodied white men. And so what do? You build
a patriarchal society.
That benefit you.
Right.
Yes.
That benefits you, right?
Yeah.
And that, to me, that just makes sense.
Right.
It explains so much of how our like systems work and why there are so many people that are marginalized in our systems. And I said,
Yeah.
the trouble is that because it's been such a long time and it's so seeped into our society and we've conditioned ourselves to behave in a certain way,
Right.
that it's like a fish not recognizing that they're in water.
Yeah, it's
right?
just
Like,
internalized.
It's so
becomes
internalized that when
Yeah.
you're trying to point it out,
Yeah.
then you're constantly met with opposition
Right.
or like a justification
Yes.
or some kind of defensiveness, right?
Right. And not that it can, I'm not trying to like say reverse racism or anything, but I think we listened to a podcast a while back called Holy Hurt, and it's a psychologist, she kind of deals with like spiritual trauma.
Mhm.
And one of the traumas they talk about in that is the trauma that white people, he's sort of hesitant to use the word trauma in this context, but the trauma that some white people have because of their history of like being
The bad
lumped
guys.
in with the colonizing,
Yeah.
the colonizing group, I guess. And then now how speaking to white people about this can be a really triggering and tricky topic, but like how do we do it well, and how do we I mean, like, I'm sure just between you and your husband, like some of that comes out. I know I've had conversations with my husband where even with like going over the history of feminism and stuff and recognizing that society is built for men and white men, like he's a white man. So it's hard to like, sometimes I get how you could feel, all of that is sort of projected onto you all of a sudden. And it's like kind of scary, but I think he's been very open to just like listening and acknowledging like, yes. And so I think, I don't know, it just comes down to like people who are willing to, I don't know, acknowledge,
see their part in
there.
it. I mean, I think
see their
that's
part in it.
like, that's sort of the foundation maybe of this podcast, in the sense of like, what if you are like the bad guy? Like, what if you actually have a
Right.
part to play and maybe weren't responsible for this, like the whole thing, but
No.
you definitely, like, if you take some acknowledgement or some accountability for a part that you could make different decisions to change like the outcome, like then I think that's the bit where you're like, right, am I a part of the problem? Like in some way, like the way even that you say, okay, yes, I'm a person of color, you know, maybe have some things stacked against me, but I still have a lot of privilege. So then how am I also part of, again, the solution for this thing too?
Or
right?
advocating for,
for
those
others.
less privileged or, I don't know.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that? I know, I feel like this is bubbling up for you. I love it. Please teach us a bit of,
So I was in a workshop recently, and sometimes, and one of the topics I was addressed is that sometimes, you know, we'll say, well, that can't discriminate against the white people, and the idea of reverse discrimination. And essentially what I learned is that there's no such thing, because we live in a society that actually amplifies and puts into positions of power white people. That's, I mean, and I don't think anyone would argue with that.
Yeah.
Just look at who's in power in any of our institutions or systems, right?
People do argue with that, though.
I'm sure they would, but I think if you were to say, look, like, you know, who's in power, who are the C-suite?
It seems obvious.
The C-suite people in your company, and all these things. And I think so a couple of things. The first thing is, because I say that we live in a white supremacist culture does not mean that I think my husband, as a white person, thinks that he is better than, or is using his power to marginalize people of color.
Right.
Yes, absolutely not.
Yeah.
When I say that, what I mean is that you as a white person have not had any barriers presented before you when you're trying to get a job, or when you're trying to get a degree, or when you're trying to get a mortgage, when you're trying to, all these institutionalized things that we access, right? Healthcare, financial, judicial.
Yeah.
No barriers, because regardless of how wealthy you are,
Right.
Yes.
no barriers because of your skin color compared to people of color, right? And so I pushed back around that. And the other thought that I had is that something that I've wrestled with is, because of the society that we live in, we've also been conditioned to take care of white people, so that my words can't be offensive to a white person.
Right.
Right. And I think of a situation recently, and I felt like I couldn't speak freely because it was putting a white person on the making them feel defensive, or like making them feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right.
And I've said this sort of out loud before too, is that I'm not going to apologize for making someone feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because that's not on me.
Right.
Mm.
Right. I can be a kind, caring, empathetic, considerate person and say, well, actually, when you make that joke, that's racist.
Yeah.
If that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's on you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Right. Or if I use words like white person, and even that, and some people will say, oh, but like I'm Caucasian. And well, do you know the history of that word? And that it actually it was used to elevate white people.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we don't use that. I don't use that word.
Okay, teach us more. Like, these are the things I don't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know the
Yes.
history of that word.
Yeah. I should look up the name of the guy, Linnaeus, who was doing all the sort of categorizing. He wanted to way back.
Yeah.
Early science, and wanted to was comparing the skulls of like the continent, like Europe and like Africa.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he used the word Caucasian for Europeans.
Okay.
As to say that they were better than
Superior.
Right.
Yeah.
Like something about their physical
Bone structure.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So it was used to do that sort of that foundation of racism where we're going to put, humans on a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And white is always at the top.
Yeah.
Right. And some races are more primitive or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. That's who knew? I didn't know.
I didn't know either.
This is like why we need,
last
yes.
year.
Yes.
Yeah. We were learning that too in terms of just like male and female hierarchy with like women's bodies being them going right to the like skeletal structure to see like where are the differences and who's superior, man or woman. Like it's pretty it's wild.
Well, that it's so baked in, right? That you don't even realize.
Totally.
Yeah. Again, that's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in your, I guess, deconstruction of a right, like taking your worldview apart and kind of examining, and doing that self-examination, right, which is again something we believe in, that you want to fix the world out there, and really it's about potentially looking inward first, right? And so you say, like, you've been reading books, you take courses. Maybe share with us some of the books that have been most impactful for you, or what are the resources?
The way you thought about it.
I would say that my favorite out of the three that I brought would be The 4 Pivots by Shawn Ginwright.
Okay.
And hold on, there was something in here that I wanted to share because I feel like this book does a great job of balancing being an advocate and speaking out against racism, but also having that self-reflective piece and doing it with care.
Yes.
So he befriended, and he is Black. He befriended might be a strong word, but he might use that word.
Yeah.
A white supremacist.
Okay.
And had this conversation had a conversation with
love that.
Yeah.
With him. And so one thing that I underlined was that we need to embrace the courage to learn and listen, not for agreement, but from a place of humble curiosity and the possibility of belonging.
Oh man. Yeah.
And his whole book kind of goes through these 4 pivots. I cannot tell you what they are right now because I read this a while ago.
It's great though.
And it like mixes in with all the other books. But highly recommended if you're willing to do the work of being self-reflective and finding a place to just speak about racism and anti-racism.
Yeah. Grow your awareness.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And the other one, we'll talk about that one, is The Wake Up by Michelle Mi-Jung Kim. And I like this book because the author is a Korean American, and she, a female, who is also queer. And I feel like it gave a voice. There was a voice that I hadn't heard from.
Right.
And maybe some pieces of it, especially like the being Korean part, obviously, resonated with me. And I kind of felt, and one of her things is that when we look at anti-racism, then we're looking at the inclusion of the rights of all humans. Then you have to, like, you can't say that you love all people.
Right.
And not sort of dive into what does it mean to be anti-racist?
Right.
What does it mean that people are still subjected to these overt hate crimes or like just
Right.
an overt racism and discrimination and
Yeah.
all those things, right? So
Yes.
I really appreciated her book in doing that for me.
Yeah, I think she's actually on the Holy Hurt podcast.
Yeah,
She's
really?
interviewed, by Hillary, and I wrote notes from her, speaking. It was great.
Yeah, she's a good speaker too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like even like this, I mean, the little byline here is reimagining justice, reimagining ourselves. So good, that's 4 pivots. And then this one, the wake up, closing the gap between good intentions and real change. Like
That's
both
a
oh my
great
gosh.
subtitle.
Yes,
Yes.
so good.
And she did have a company where she went into different like big companies to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
And kind of any companies that wanted to take that work on and really
That's great.
leans into like some companies, it's all tokenism and they're just there to like
Right.
take
It's
a
hard to
box.
sift through that, I feel. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And-
Totally.
Yes. That just reminds
The good
me of-
intentions and
Yeah.
the actual change,
Yes,
which
right.
is much slower and takes a lot more work than just
It's a lot harder.
putting people into positions, because of how they look or
Oh yeah, it's a whole
Giving
other
them a
conversation. Yeah,
platform
that
because
could
of
be a
what-
conversation
Totally.
too. What does it mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
The last one is called White Women, Everything You Already Know About Your Own Racism and How to Do Better. This one actually might interest you, Micah.
Okay.
because
Yeah.
it's the intersection of women and racism
Okay.
and white women specifically.
Yes.
And how, and I think maybe you've heard of white women tears.
I haven't.
Yeah. So when we're, let's say we're talking about something that's, I said about racism and I say, oh, Micah, that what you said the other day that really like hurt me and it was racist. I kind of lead that conversation.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
let's say you were white.
Yeah.
Then you would start crying and being like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. And like you start crying and then I say, it's okay. I don't want you to cry.
Right.
And I think, and this is sort of, it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not I don't want to say that it's manipulative, but what happens is in any conversations around, and it could be racism, it could be about anything hard. And we've all been there, I think, where you open up to someone about something hard, they start crying, and all of a sudden now the conversation's about them and how bad they feel.
Right.
And
And
I'm
then
like,
you end up somehow always doing the emotional labor again.
exactly. And then maybe apologizing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think they talk about white women tears in this, and also just the fact that the intersection of patriarchy is that white women will put down other women in order to get ahead.
Oh,
Right?
totally.
And so
Yeah.
even if they say that they are anti-racist,
Yeah.
if it means that they can get ahead
Oh,
and
sure.
you're a woman of color,
Yeah. I know. I think that's a
That's
human
my
thing
point.
across the board. Like
Yeah.
women policing women is
Absolutely.
still 100% there. And there are, that's what I've kind of realized as well. There's even with just, thinking about like complementarianism and that view of seeing men as like the head or, in charge or more intellectual and has more authority. Like so much of that has also been internalized by so many
Absolutely.
women that it's hard to bring it to the forefront when it's not even seen as like an issue. And maybe for some people it isn't an issue. That's the thing. Like when you were saying about awareness, like I think there would be a lot of people who haven't even considered that all the people in power are white. Like they just wouldn't be even thinking about it. So then, like how do you bring something into consciousness that is not there? Like,
Absolutely.
and it is tricky. I find it tricky and I still don't really know.
Well, and that's the benefit of maybe moments in or time when these things come to the forefront, where then you have to continue to push the ball forward,
Yeah.
right? And go like, okay, right, like that maybe, COVID happened, 6 years ago, right, or whatever, and then to go like, okay, no, that was a catalyst, and no, we're not done. Like we've got to keep going, even though we're tired. I mean, I think it's interesting sometimes, like you and I have had the conversation about, the person that is marginalized or that has been abused, that has to like stand up and advocate for like mistreatment. And you're like, I'm so tired. Can someone else please do this work? And yet here you are like representing and having to continue to explain. And I mean, we've had conversations where, you know, there's microaggressions going on and you're like, God, like, why does nobody understand? Just, do you want to talk a bit about how exhausting that can be? I mean, not even for you, but even for the people that, you know, have less
experience it on a daily.
And then just to like really, encourage people to like do the work. Like, this isn't somebody else's problem. We're all connected to each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know that I don't want to be a hypocrite and encourage people to do things that I don't do, but I think at the same time, it's important to have these conversations. And one step I think is learning how to label it. So giving it a name, right? So when someone makes a joke or someone, I mean, this an easy one for lack of a better example is our family has decided not to travel to the States with the current administration and what's going on down there.
Yeah.
And a white male, a friend of ours, was like, well, why not? Like, it's totally fine to go down. And I didn't think that it was a time or place, but I said to my husband, that's really easy for him to say when he's a white male. If I were to go down, that's different, right? Someone might assume that I don't belong in that, I don't look like a citizen, or I don't look like I should be in that country, and that could be very scary, and that's a very real fear. So to like say it out loud and name it and saying, well, no, he's saying that because of his position as a white male. Or is there a microaggression happening where they say something like, oh, so-and-so's food, they all taste the same and they all eat the same thing. No, they don't. And so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I think when you look at what can we do to impact society, or what can we do to make change in this world and have justice for everyone, it can be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, Krista, I don't have the energy sometimes to engage in those conversations either.
Yeah. It
right?
is tiring.
And it's tiring. Work. It's work.
Yeah.
It's like emotionally hard.
That's the thing, right? Because it's a worth piece too. You're like, oh, you're kind of saying that I'm worth less than you. My perspective is worth less. And of course you don't believe that, but having to kind of fight for that it's hard.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part, is because I'm like, there's people who maybe make assumptions about your culture because they're trying to connect and they're trying to have a conversation and trying to find some form of like, oh, I know this about your culture, and it may be somewhat ignorant, somewhat misinformed, but they're trying to like, you know, and so I find just a very tricky balance of like having grace for people and then also knowing when to speak up and be like, that's racist.
Right. And there's no like right or best way either, right? And I think we all find our voice,
yes,
in a way that resonates with just our values.
Yes.
And so I think acting out within that is really important. And sometimes I may say something just to shock somebody, and I'm like, hey, wow, how is this gonna land?
But sometimes that can also be the thing that causes, and you just never know, like that causes them to be like, oh wow, yeah, I never thought about that, and now I'm like reassessing all the things I've said about like
well, knowing that that's not on you, like this is the invitation to to kind of be uncomfortable. Like we as a society don't really know how to process, of course, our emotions or feelings about things, and especially being uncomfortable. I mean, you and your husband and I, we had this conversation about comfort and about how often, like we're all exhausted. I mean, the cost of living is insane. Like it's a lot of pressure that a lot of people are under, especially when they're raising children and all of that. And so, you don't want to cause just another reason to feel like angsty, but yet that's not really the call of what it is to be human too, especially when there are these big issues at hand. Like it's okay.
I think what you're like, yes, I totally agree. And I feel like one of the things that is an easier way to maybe get into it
Mhm.
is by just simply having curiosity and like hearing, because that can be hard to also just consider hearing a story that would normally make you uncomfortable. But a really great way to do that is through like reading a book from a person who maybe has a completely different standpoint in life than you would. And what you were saying about once you sort of blow the lid off racism, like it's very hard to not connect that to all the other marginalized groups out there and realize, oh yeah, like there are many marginalized groups. And I think what's hard for people of color who, when like the George Floyd thing happened and like that sort of blew the lid off of it for society, but these people have also been dealing with this for like centuries. And imagine their exhaustion at that point where it's like, oh, finally they're taking notice. But then you have to like do all the explaining and like go over your, generations of racial, injustice and trauma. And like, it's just, that is really hard. And I think there's a lot of diverse opinions probably on like this in itself. And so just hearing from different voices and from people's experience who are maybe way more mired in it and don't just have an easy out, like that can be hard just for us who are more comfortable and privileged and like have even the time to just sit and read.
Yeah, absolutely. Not everyone has that time or the luxury. And I think that's kind of going back to, for example, my parents, they didn't have the time to think about whether or not they were conforming to society. Right. They just wanted to survive. Yeah. Put food on the table, work. Yeah. I think that when your daily task is survival, then the sort of like philosophically talking about racism obviously doesn't happen. Right. And nor do I think that it should. Right. And I think in terms of justice, what can people do? I think if you are a white person and curious, then read a book, pick up a book, talk to somebody, ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think that's really important because a lot of times you may not want to ask your friend, who's a person of color, hey, like tell me more. I'm so curious. What's life like for you? And when I listen to other people's stories about how there was another educator who is Black and has children who are Black, and going through the stories, his teenage sons would often be profiled and followed. Yes. Right? Whereas I've never, ever observed that with my own kids or myself. Yeah. And so I think when you start talking that blatant racism that we think doesn't happen, does happen. Right. And the ways people assimilate for safety. Absolutely. To make themselves less threatening. Right. Not even because they're trying to, like disregard their own culture. It's just, survival. There's this responsibility for, I think, white people in this society to have, if you are curious, if this is sort of not even on your radar, then that's totally fine. Like, I don't expect everyone, right? Everyone has a certain time and place where they come to that realization. And I can't get angry or offended because one person isn't ready for it. But maybe through conversations they would be, or maybe you're kind of like wanting to, but you don't know how to start. Yeah. Then it is maybe reading a book and maybe kind of figuring out, what are the systems in place? Where is that systemic racism playing out? Yeah. And how can I talk to people about it? Or if I hear something that seems kind of racist, then maybe I'll just say that out loud and not be afraid to say it out loud. Yeah. And I think it's in those moments that, for me anyways, that's kind of how I've landed with just in my sphere of being able to have those conversations. Yeah. Because there is a piece of me that I do want to teach, right? And as an educator, I guess that's what's natural. I want to teach. I want to teach you. And I want to be able to have a legacy that my kids, my own children, are going to be anti-racist, and that the students I interact with know what that means. Right? Yes. So when I go to a school and any, and I have the space and the ability to have like an audience or to be able to teach, I want to be able to teach that this is what racism is. This is how our society was built. This is why certain things have. This is why all princesses are white.
Right.
Right. I just read a quick headline about the new live action Moana and how they straightened her hair and waved it.
Oh, wow.
Instead of letting her natural curls, which is just
the first one
right?
was, yeah.
Right.
And so it's kind of those kinds of things
Yeah.
where you see, or talk to my kids, how is like that drug cartel portrayed? Oh, what color are they? Why is it that that's always a certain skin color that the drug cartel, right? And I think once we start asking those questions and you can see it around you and you just start talking about it,
Right.
that's one way to kind of like have that awareness of environment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That might be lacking. That maybe, you've never really thought about.
Yeah.
What is the difference, if you can define that for us? Like,
Mhm.
I'm not a racist versus anti-racism, like that
Right.
distinction, because that's interesting to me.
So I would say that someone who says, I'm not a racist would just think, oh, like I like and respect everybody,
Right.
We're all equal.
Right.
And they don't necessarily harm others. They may have assumptions and biases and implicit biases that haven't been identified yet because we all have those.
Totally.
I'd say being an anti-racist is doing the active work of anti-racism, of like trying to correct the ship a bit,
Yes.
right? So that I am working towards educating people, or I'm working towards even like realigning my own thinking.
Right. Which that's, I
Right.
think, the hardest shift is like, that new sort of thinking, remodeling your thinking a bit.
Yeah, 'cause I've often I've had conversations where I will call out someone, a student or a family member around, that's not okay. That you did this, and this. But I'm not a racist. Okay, well, you can do racist things.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? Like it's almost like absolving ourselves of any kind of wrongdoing. And I think
Yeah.
or I didn't something else that I've heard is, well, I didn't mean it that way. That wasn't my intention. And,
Right.
And I think a conversation that I've had with especially with my kids and with my husband is that sometimes intention matters.
It does.
But also how it lands matters.
This is like a huge,
And we need to take, accountability for how it landed.
Right.
That's right.
Right?
I think it matters, but sometimes it's not enough. Like intention kind of,
The consequence, like,
the gap, like the book is saying,
Yes.
between intention and then action is, there's a gap unless we close the gap.
Exactly.
well, and especially given the system that we're all kind of like embedded in, right? Like you kind of can't escape it unless you're going to do some like very pointed work too.
Yeah. I feel like maybe an important thing is knowing that you're going to also make mistakes. Like,
Yes.
and that you won't always get it right, because this is a learning curve, I think, for everyone. Like, and even having conversations about it is a learning curve. I mean, like, I think of the queer community and like pronouns and things like that. And going into school, I had to get used to using those when I hadn't before, because I was like sitting alongside queer folk and classmates who are queer and who have a very different, like, perspective on life and position in life than I do. And messing up sometimes and being like, whoops, I mean, they, and just like the learning, there will be mistakes.
Absolutely.
There will be like misunderstandings. There will be sort of, things you sort of have to backtrack on. And I don't know, but just keeping the communication going, I think, is what is important with moving forward and trying to keep doing better and
That's the thing,
keep being
right?
an advocate, I guess.
Yeah, like that I'm sure there are some people that would hesitate to even engage in even listening to this conversation because again, it makes them feel uncomfortable, or it's like, why bother? Like, but again, that's definitely not where we need to stay, because this is, we're hearing that this is an issue.
Right.
And it is worth making the fumbles, and potentially you're going to offend people. That's part of life. Like, And to, again, have the humility to go like, oh, I'm sorry. Like that was actually a douchey thing to say.
Yeah.
And let me try better. Like, let me do better. Let me try again. And again, thankfully, there are people that, there's a lot of grace.
Yeah.
Like shown both ways.
Yeah. Just people who are curious and want to learn. Like, I think it's funny because I was just going to say quickly, I have 7 siblings. And so we all it's interesting how we've all sort of like interfaced with our culture and stuff. And I think it's funny because a lot of my sisters would probably call me like the white one. Because I just there's a couple of my sisters know so much more about like our heritage and our language, and they would even like speak it and be teaching it to their kids.
Oh, wow.
And so like for me too, like only in the last couple years, probably 10 years, slow realization of like realizing where I sort of, just internalized kind of like whiteness, and then being like, no, I'm proud of my culture and I want my kids to know about it. But unless I tell them and teach them what I just, absorbed as a kid, like living here in Canada, very far from like my heritage and family members, like they just won't know unless it's pretty crazy to think, to see how things can just die if you're like,
totally.
Well, and it's so based in survival. Like as much as you don't want to be super dramatic, but again, for you to leave like your home and to choose something different for yourself and for your family, a lot of that had to do like you had to abandon some of those things, right?
It's really tricky to talk about, but because I mean, one of the reasons I found it hard with in New Zealand, there is a lot of like toxic masculinity, and that can also be cultural and like. So I think I had that also in my subconscious, leaving like I don't want to, and I don't want to go into a marriage where there's potentially like where I'm going to be treated a certain way,
right?
And in that sense, I was you have this ideal of like white guys don't treat girls that way. That's right. Right. Oh, not all men, but like, so it's just complex. Like, and then, meeting my husband who I absolutely love and adore. And he's like such a good man. And we have so many conversations about this, but race is probably the one we have never really like delved into deeply, but he's always been, not for lack of like barriers or like, because I don't want to talk about it, but just because my own it's intertwined with, like your own self-understanding. So it's interesting.
I know, I feel like there's so much more that we could talk about in this, and just, I mean, maybe we'll have to do a part 2 or something.
Maybe.
But I thought I would ask you just as we close, just because I really appreciate the fact that your faith intersects with this. Like, obviously, the Jesus that we are still attached to is one of justice, right? Like he was somebody that spoke for the
person of color.
Yes, person of color.
Let's point that out.
He was a person of color.
All those nativity scenes were wrong.
I know. Oh my gosh. Oh yes, thank you for that. But
stop there.
Yes. Spoke for the like oppressed people, spoke truth, was not afraid to say the uncomfortable thing that was pervasive in society. So thoughts, just like how do you express your faith in this? And because I believe that you would say like this is deeply intertwined with that, right? Yeah. So
as a foundational piece, absolutely, that with my faith, I believe that, and a core value of that would be that all human life is worth, as value, has worth and value inherently.
Yes.
Right. So whether it's race or ability, like physical ability, mental ability, it's all encompassing. And I think that's kind of when I was telling my story about how I got into teaching and special education, really I resonated with that and it became a passion area. I've come to realize that sort of encompasses the general idea of human rights for all, right? And when we look at the story of Jesus and where he landed with different marginalized peoples, he amplified those voices. He advocated for those people, right? And I think absolutely I don't want to go into how faith is maybe encapsulated by like institution, But for me personally, it would be that it's shown through living out the idea of equality to its fullest.
Right.
Yes.
And I think, you know, and as a sort of admission of not doing things well, is that I think I do have a harder time with extending that hand out to those who are like unhoused or have addiction.
Yeah.
Right. And a connection that I have is several years ago now, I did a trip to Ethiopia. Not church related or anything or faith related, just through my running actually.
Yeah.
And we raised money to put in a well in a small rural village in Ethiopia. And because there was no running water and they had to like walk for a couple hours, fill up their bucket, come back, which kind of led to girls not being able to go to school.
Yeah.
It was very unclean, those things. And it's a sustenance kind of living where you just grow what you can, eat that, and there's mud huts and there's no plumbing, like nothing, right? Just a hole in the ground kind of idea. So just to paint a picture of like, as a person coming from
Indoor plumbing, at least.
Yes. And relatively, absolutely, like a level of wealth that the people that were in that village could never, ever even
attain.
Absolutely. Not even a fraction. Right. And so I just remember that someone reached out their hand to me to like, I don't take my hand. And there was probably, I think there were 20 of us, and we were like received as like celebrities.
Yeah.
Which was very
so weird.
But yeah, someone reached their hand out and I didn't take their hand because it looked dirty.
Yeah.
Like literally dirty.
Yeah.
And that kind of has stuck with me, that if I were to go back, it's a deep regret of mine.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that is, like, to me, when you look at the value of life,
right,
it's being able to receive the hand that's extended out to you, right?
Totally.
And that sort of sign of like, hey, like I see you and you see me.
Yeah.
And so my work around anti-racism, bring that into my school and into my conversations around who I talk with. It's really an extension of that, right? Because it made, in hindsight, when I put that experience into my current context, I'm like, wow, that was very like privileged and classist of me.
Yes.
You know, and to basically look down on someone because they look different.
Right.
Or like their hygiene wasn't
Totally.
what I thought was acceptable. So that is a very roundabout way of saying yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like, that speaks to, again, the intention. Like, you can have the intention of like, no, I value all people and like, I see everyone as equal. And then when you're slapped in the face with like an inequality or someone who is very much more at a disadvantage. Yeah. And like how you respond to that can sometimes be your own tell of like, oh, I've still got work to do. Like I still have developing. And what you're saying about the unhoused and those with addiction, like I totally, resonate with that too. Cause Vancouver is pretty wild when you go down to the city, and it's hard to go there. It's confronting to go there, and it's kind of depressing to go there. But like, if we care about people, like those people matter, right? And what is their experience like of being unhoused? How did they get there? I'm sure not everyone's got the same story, but we also like to lump them into one group, like it's all addiction or it's all like, and we just don't know. Like you have no idea. So
yeah. Thank you. It's amazing that you're able to even share like a confession of something like that and be vulnerable, because again, like you were saying, like I'm not a racist, but if you make one racist joke, like does that make you can you lean that way if there's like one flaw in you? And again, as like this podcast called like Bad People or whatever, the fact that you would join us in this and, ask questions and kind of be self-reflective. And I mean, again, for us is to sort of go like, is there even like one little stain or whatever where we like to project perfection, and we like to sort of say like, you could easily come on here and go like, I've got it all figured out, and here are 3 books, and here are the podcasts or the whatever, and I'm
just do A, B, and C.
Yes,
I got
A, B, and C, and let me teach you. And again, stand on a platform, stand with a mic or whatever, and to go like, no, these are the areas that, yes, again, like you're saying, like we're still a work in progress,
out,
and there's still little aspects that we all have to learn. And again, the invitation is to do so. The invitation is to have like the hard conversations and enter into spaces that are uncomfortable and, you know, maybe aren't black and white, and all the nuance in that. And so, on that note, any final closing thoughts from you?
Oh, that's a lot of pressure.
Sorry.
Well, maybe like how, because you described how like race and all this had never really been a factor in your younger years. And then now since you've started reading and like advocating more, what's your kind of position now? Like what do you see sort of when you look out on society? Like is it more confronting now, like that your awareness has raised a little where you see it everywhere, or I don't know.
Yes and no. I think, like you said, once you kind of have your eyes open to what is like reality in terms of racism, it is definitely confronting, and I see it seeped into so many different areas of life. But on the flip side, the hope, I think you have to carry that hope of being able to change something somewhere.
Right.
And I think that's maybe one thing that I've been mindful of, is that if you are in a position of privilege, a position of being able to have your voice heard, then use it. Use it to point out, hey, we do live in a white supremacist culture. Maybe start there. Right? That, like, can we all just agree on that? And then from there, build on it. And I think for me, just in the different positions that I've been put in, and being invited on this podcast even, it's a great opportunity when you're given a voice, when you're given a space to speak out on what you are convicted by. Right? And if you are convicted that we do have racism, and that, you know, maybe it exists. And that, like, you know, you can say that I see all people as equal. That's maybe a nice little, like, rose-colored glasses position, because not all are equal.
Which is also another way to start.
Exactly.
We're that's great. Lots of food for thought.
I know, right? Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I might invite some people because Hannah does love running, and it's kind of funny. What you've taught me is that every like small little step counts. And I think that not only applies to your running, but then obviously to this.
Literally.
Exactly. And I mean, you've been a really inspiring person in my life, where even the physicality of that, and just sort of going like, just start. Funny enough, it's Hannah's work with like Run for Water. So she participates in this annual race. Is it Abbotsford? That's right. Yeah, Abbotsford. So I might post a link to that. I know Hannah has a team, and that we all ran and did that last year. Kids can be involved, so that's pretty cool. It's a fundraising event as well. So I'll do that, and then we'll post the books that she's linked. And
I'm very curious about these.
Any questions, please, DM us, and then we'll go from there. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Great combo.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.